Right before we jump into this video, I just inputted this new camera into my Gear Vault to make sure that it's protected and that I have the serial number on file just in case something happens. Now, if you haven't downloaded it yet, it's absolutely free. You can download it at mygearvault.com for iOS and Android. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a preview of the Sony a7 III. We were just at the press event here in Las Vegas, and over the next couple of days, we will be filming a real-world review with this camera. Also, we are filming this preview with the a7 III as well. So let's talk about the specs and functions of this camera. Now, this is an entry-level full frame. It's the lowest end full frame camera that Sony is offering. It has a 24.2 megapixel BSI sensor, as well as 100 to 51,200 ISO that's expandable all the way down to 50 and all the way up to 204,800 for when you're shooting stills. Now, if you're a landscape photographer, you're going to like to hear the fact that this has 15 stops of dynamic range when you are shooting in the lower ISOs. As your ISOs go up higher, you cut back on the amount of dynamic range, so keep that in mind. Now, in terms of autofocus, you have 693 phase detect AF points covering 93% of the viewfinder. Now, if that sounds similar to the A9, that's because it sounds just like the A9, and we're pretty sure that it's the same focusing system. At least it has the same focusing points, or the same amount of points that the A9 has. Now, if it does have the same focusing system, we know from the real-world review of the Sony A9 that that focusing system is fantastic. It also has IAF, which is one of my favorite functions in a Sony camera, that it will just find the eye when you need it. Look, you don't have to stay in single focus. You can be in continuous focus, nail the eye, and still be able to get your composition right without having to lock in and recompose. That is an awesome function. You will get 10 frames a second in mechanical. You'll also get 10 frames a second when you're using the silent shutter mode. You can get up to 177 standard JPEGs in a row, which is what Ken Rockwell will be using. It's true, I met him. He already told me that. He didn't actually tell me that, but I did meet him. He's a nice guy. You can do up to 40 RAW files in a row. That's the uncompressed RAW. That means you can hold the shutter down for 4 seconds before you fill the buffer, and if you're filling the buffer after 4 seconds, you probably need to have your finger cut off because you're shooting way too many photos. It has the 5-axis in-body stabilization, which is great. It also works in conjunction when you have the IS in the lenses, or whatever Sony decides to call it. It works in conjunction there, but to have every lens that you put on this camera to be stabilized, it seems like it's par for the course with Sony these days and a lot of other camera manufacturers other than Nikon and Canon. In terms of battery, you have the same Z battery that you find in the a7 III and the Sony A9, and that's going to give you a rated 710 shots. Of course, that will vary depending on how you are using your camera. They have 2 SD card slots. One of them is UHS 1, the other is UHS 2. Still makes no sense why they don't just make them 2 UHS 2s, but hey, I'm not Sony. They probably wanted to save some money to keep this priced as low as they did, and the price is coming up before the end of this video. They also added the joystick on the back, which is nice to get around to move those focusing points. And now I'm flipping to the video specs. You have 4K full frame video up to 30 frames a second, no pixel binning in Super 35, which is, I believe, what we're shooting this in right now. Steven's giving me the thumbs up because that's what we're shooting in. So basically, it has the same video features as the a7 III, which you can see with the real-world review of the a7 III, because that video was shot with the a7 III. You can do 120 frames a second at 1080p, which is par for the course these days. Nice to have in this camera. The EVF is 2.3 million dots, which is about 1 million dots less than what you find in the a7 III. So 2.3 million dots, that's just the resolution there. Hopefully it doesn't affect my shooting. It now has a USB 3.1 Type-C. It will also charge over that, so that's super nice that it has that for charging, as well as getting files off the camera if you want to do that. And now the price, if you guess right now, everybody scream at your screen what you think the price is. In 3, 2, 1, that could be the price. It's $2,000. So $2,000 is pretty good in comparison to the 6D Mark II and the Nikon D750, which is what I would equate this camera to, even though those are both a little older. And I think the functions and features in this camera are pretty darn good when you put them up against both of those cameras. But it will be interesting to see what happens with the Nikon D750 when they replace that. Will it use the same sensor that's in this Sony camera? Maybe. We'll see. This is up for pre-order starting Wednesday, and it will be available in April. Now, like I said, we are taking this out on a real-world review to see how it functions in the actual real world. We will give you RAW files. We will give you JPEGs just like we always do. And that is pretty much it, guys. Let me know what you think about this camera. Are you thinking about picking this up to shoot weddings, or just to get into the full frame game? And would you switch from whatever system you're on to pick up this new Sony a7 III? Let me know down below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and all of those good things. And that is where I'll leave it. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya. To check out a real-world review of the a7 III, go ahead and click on the screen where you see that video. And if you'd like to check out a real-world review of the Sony a9, you can go ahead and click there as well. Don't forget to give this a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you already haven't. And please, click on something, because it's good.